Yo! Video games.
Alright, so what up, dudes? Thank you for everyone coming in here. This is going to be my second attempt at this video. Unfortunately, I screwed up the audio the first time, but we are talking about some recent developments that happened with Nintendo and Bandai Namco, and it's very kind of unusual, something that happened where Bandai Namco decided to sell a whole subsidiary studio of theirs, Bandai Namco Singapore, to Nintendo, who's going to rename it Nintendo Studio Singapore, to help them work on other games and various projects for the Nintendo Switch 2 going forward. So that's pretty cool. It is unusual. This is not something that happens often. One, because Nintendo just doesn't usually buy other developers or other studios. That just doesn't happen very often alone. And two is that this was from what I understand, a sort of internally developed and built studio by Bandai Namco. This was a lot of ex LucasArts people. They go all the way back to Star Wars 1313. Anyone remember that? But yeah, they've mostly been kind of a support studio for Bandai Namco projects. But here's the crazy thing: is not just Bandai Namco. They've actually been working with Nintendo before, so this isn't the crazy out of the blue why them, why now kind of thing that you might have suspected. So here's the funny thing: is that they worked on Splatoon 3. They worked on new Pokemon Snap. I love how when I say loop and it doesn't loop. That's great. But yeah, they worked on new Pokemon Snap, which was frankly the best looking Pokemon game that's probably ever been made, but also one of the worst selling Pokemon games. New Pokemon Snap on Switch. So they have history with Nintendo. They've worked with them. It's also not the first time Nintendo's bought games developers from Bandai Namco. But yeah, Nintendo and Namco have like a pretty cozy relationship, and that goes pretty much all the way back to the GameCube, and frankly goes even further back if you go back to the N64, where Nintendo made deals with Namco at the time, they were Namco, to internally port like Ridge Racer. Like Ridge Racer 64 was made and developed, was ported by Nintendo Software Technology way back on the N64. So they actually have some interesting history, going back and forth where, obviously Link and Soul Calibur and Byte and Kaitos and Tales of Symphonia and so on and so forth. And they've actually had a pretty cozy relationship ever since then. As for the fighting games, other than Link and Soul Calibur, that was kind of like the first and last time Nintendo and Namco really were chummy. They did have Tekken Tag Tournament 2 Wii U edition, which had some Nintendo exclusive features and modes, but otherwise, like, Namco and Nintendo have not really been partners much in regards to the fighting game side of it. Sort of unfortunately, but it is what it is. But yeah, as far as like Singapore goes, again, they go all the way back to Star Wars 1313. This is kind of just unusual, and they recently, and you're seeing it here, recently had their own original game come out, which was Hirogami, which is pretty cool, pretty neat. It was a fun little game, something in the vein of something like a Lego Star Wars like caliber title, like something of that, where it's like it's fixed camera, it's like light puzzle solving, light platforming, a fun look, a very unique style and all that. It's not going to win no Game of the Year award, but it's pretty neat, So you then kind of like pose the question, okay, so why does Nintendo want Bandai Namco Singapore? And the easy simple thing is like, they didn't want to lose that support branch, that they had. Obviously they're making Splatoon Raiders. Singapore is probably involved with Splatoon Raiders, probably is already involved, and is probably going to just continue to work on it. So this kind of leads to sort of like why, like how, and maybe like the how did this happen? And I can only guess, and this is a complete guess, for me and from my side, is that I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Bandai Namco was looking to shut down the studio, like just get rid of it. Maybe as a cost-cutting measure or something, nobody doing well except Nintendo right now. And Nintendo was kind of like, well, hold on, wait a minute. we vibe with this studio. We'll pick it up. And the reason they picked them up is probably because, again, I said vibe, is that Nintendo doesn't buy studios very often. They recently did say in an investors conference that they would be doing more acquisitions, more pickups going forward because of the necessary manpower required for Switch 2 development, which is 100% true. No lie there. So that makes a lot of sense. But like, why exactly would they pick, say, Bandai Namco Singapore of all studios? And I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's probably because Nintendo gelled with them. This goes back a few years when they picked up Next Level Games, and Next Level Games was going to go public or going to look to be bought, and Nintendo was like, well, hold on now. Your Luigi's Mansion 3 sold 12 million copies. We can't have you getting scooped up by someone else. We'll buy you. But Nintendo doesn't just buy people even if they're successful. Like Mario and Luigi devs Alpha Dream, Nintendo just was like, buy. They just let them go out of business. Like they didn't seem to care about Alpha Dream going out. Now there's hearsay, unconfirmed hearsay, that management at Alpha Dream was a mess. But I mean, I have literally there's nothing to back that claim up. It's just pure speculation. It just fits the narrative that Nintendo doesn't like to get involved with things if they're like, they don't jive from a company corporate culture standpoint. So like Nintendo was like, you know what, we want them. Let's pick them up. So maybe that sort of tracks here. So this is probably why they probably gelled well with Singapore. Now, also, if we go back and remember, Nintendo recently set up a Singapore headquarters over there. So them grabbing a studio on top of it just kind of makes sense too. It's like, okay, and also there is a budding community of game developers coming out of Southeast Asia. We already saw China and Korea kind of like, take the world by storm on console and big budget gaming. And I think Southeast Asia is also about ready to burst at the seams with talent. One thing a lot of people seem to think is that, oh, they did this because it was cheap labor for them. And that's not true. Singapore is not a country where you can just get cheap labor, like compared to Tokyo or compared to Japan in general. It's not that much cheaper. It's really like, this was not sort of like, oh, cheap labor, great. No, this was Singapore is not the country with the tech industry. You can just throw that around here. So I think Nintendo bought them because they saw something in them. And here's why, and more importantly, this is awesome. Let me just say that. Like I've been rattling a bunch of details here, but let me just say this is awesome or potentially amazing. And the reason for that is Nintendo's history with building up brand new studios or acquiring developers has actually usually gone very well. When Nintendo set up Retro Studios, Retro had like 4 to 5 game projects going at once, and they were a fucking mess. And Nintendo had to come in, they had to clean house a bit, and they had to basically shit can everything except Metroid Prime. And what did we get out of that? Metroid fucking Prime. And Retro is a slow working studio. They're a single project at a time. Things are obviously not always rosy. Things don't always go according to plan. Obviously at Retro, we can see that clearly just from release schedule. But the other thing, they've never released a bad game. So no matter how much time, or pain a game has gone through in development at Retro's not released a bad game. Retro's not even helped on a bad game. Like they helped on Mario Kart 7, and that's a good game. So this is kind of like Nintendo always finds a way with it. And Next Level Games is like, look, I understand that the people were not super thrilled with the Mario Strikers Rush Job. That was the Switch game. But I think it's also, at the end of the day, it wasn't necessarily bad gameplay. It was just sort of like that seems like a project that got pushed out the door a little too quickly. They tried to make up for it with DLC, but like again, Next Level Games makes good stuff. Like they carried the torch for Luigi's Mansion with 2 and 3 after Nintendo didn't have the manpower to continue that sub-series out. And that's why this is awesome. Because Nintendo could really build up their Singapore studio into many different facets. I mean, they could just be a support studio and they just don't get to do their original stuff ever. But Nintendo could also be building them up to be taking over a franchise for them. Or not even taking over, but like maybe reintroducing, maybe being like, hey, we don't have the ability to do this, but you guys have a lot of talent and skill here. We're going to build you up and you can become the new de facto studio. So, you know, for a while, like Retro is the de facto 3D Metroid studio. They took over Donkey Kong Country for a while. Next Level Games took over Luigi's Mansion. Next Level Games reintroduced the world to Punch-Out on the Wii. Things went very, very well in that aspect. So they could easily become a studio that takes a franchise that Nintendo doesn't have the time for, and they could build it up, and they could become this really great thing. You know, as far as what that is, I have no idea. I mean, looking at stuff like Hirogami, you could sit there and think like, oh, I could see them doing something with Yoshi, maybe be doing something with Wario. But there's other things they could be being built up to become, you know, take over Kid Icarus, take over Star Fox, you know, take over F-Zero even. Who knows? You know, we don't really know. They've helped out on a lot of different games, but again, you know, it's definitely a situation here where Nintendo could easily be building this up. And this has also happened before, where Nintendo took a studio that was maybe down on its luck and was being, you know, forced into a sort of like portable gaming IP, you know, salt mines, and then picked them up, dusted them off, and then, oops, like they helped them become the best studio in their catalog. So... I'm speaking about Monolith Soft over here. Monolith Soft was a Namco-owned studio, and when they merged, and at the time of their merger, their Xenosaga franchise had completely flopped, and they were basically getting sent to go work on IP salt mines. You know, they were making Super Robot Wars for DS. They were making Dragon Ball Attack of the Saiyans for the DS. You know, Project Cross Zone stuff like. They were getting sent to sort of IP jail on the portable systems, and morale was historically, as documented, extremely low. And around 2006, Nintendo basically said, you know what, we'll buy them. Because there was clearly, I mean, if history is anything to go by, if Monolith Soft didn't get purchased by Nintendo, they would have stuck around for maybe a few more years or until the portable market, you know, completely died off. And I'm sure Namco would have shuttered them a long time ago and absorbed some people into the main studios and just kind of let the rest of them go. So Nintendo came in, swooped in, and kind of saved the day and revitalized the whole studio. And now they're the most important studio they own. Now, like, you know, every major game has benefited from Monolith Soft's technicians and wizardry and help. Like Zelda would not be where it is today without Monolith Soft. Splatoon and Animal Crossing had help from Monolith Soft. Mario Kart World had like map design help from Monolith Soft. Like they need like they're a crown jewel, and they were at one time going to be like relegated to the sort of like the dustbin of Bandai Namco's, you know, IP, you know, shovelware. So this could easily happen with what is now Nintendo Studio Singapore, where they could, all right, maybe they're small, maybe they've only mostly done support. Hirogami's not bad, but, you know, again, it's no 10 out of 10, but it's not bad. Nintendo clearly sees an opportunity here. They see something of value in these people because, again, however good and fun the Mario and Luigi series was, Nintendo didn't give a crap about the developer. They're like, you can die. We'll find someone else to make Brothership. Like, you're not important. But they see value here. They see value in Singapore, or Nintendo Studio Singapore here. And I think that's telling and amazing. And it's also a really strong fact. This also is a huge indicator of how Nintendo is, for all their faults, and there are many, for all their faults, they're very smart when it comes to not overspending. And they didn't go after an IP. And that's kind of another thing I haven't touched on. A lot of people think this means, oh, Nintendo's going to get IP. They made Ace Combat 7 or helped greatly on Ace Combat 7. Does that mean No, Nintendo doesn't get Ace Combat 7. Nintendo literally just gets the talent. Nintendo is buying talent. They're buying a studio. They're not buying IP. And that's the difference right there between Nintendo and Microsoft and even Sony. They go out and they make these multi-billion-dollar acquisitions. They take on a bunch of fucking debt, and then to pay off the debt they just bought into, they have to massively start gutting their workforce. They have to massively like reduce their output. They have to like go, okay, money makers only kind of thing, like just put everyone in the COD mines. So like we literally saw this happen over and over with Microsoft. We've seen it happen even with Sony and Bungie, where they got hosed on that deal. And Nintendo is just like, all right, well, how about I just look for talent, create good solid creative talent, something we've maybe had work with before, something we have an understanding, a working relationship with, and even if it's not a huge thing, it'll help us immensely going forward in the future. And again, Nintendo doesn't need to buy IP. They have the IP. They are video game Disney. So again, I think this is potentially amazing because maybe there's an IP, there that Nintendo has their eye on for Singapore, just being like, all right, hey, you know what? You should do this. We think this would be a good fit. Or maybe they proposed it themselves. We don't really know. Like it could have even been a thing where someone from Bandai Namco Singapore talked to the newly set up, people from Nintendo Singapore and said like, hey, we have this really great idea, for say Kid Icarus or Ice Climbers. I don't know. I'm literally just spitballing here, right? Like just say I have this really cool idea, but like, Namco is thinking of gutting the studio. Nintendo's like, you know what? We work with you. We know your work. We know your work ethic. We know your work vibe. Like, we'll take you. I think we'll swoop in. We'll make this happen. So this is actually a very potentially awesome thing. This could, it could just be really nothing. They could just end up being like a workhorse, like Nintendo's own Tosei, where they just are on the background, just constantly working on all your favorite games, but not getting much recognition. That would kind of suck. But on the other hand, it's like, you know what? Hirogami shows potential there. There's definitely creativity and spark there. And I can definitely see why Nintendo would be, you know what? I don't want to lose you. I don't want, if Bandai Namco is shutting you down, you know what? I don't want you gone. I'm gonna keep you around. You're gonna become part of us now. Welcome to the team. And I think that's a potentially really amazing. And I think Nintendo is showing once again why they're smart, because they like playing it safe, playing it smart has its advantages. And if anything, as being the old fart that I am, buying IP is a double-edged sword, and oftentimes it's even worse. It's usually a losing gamble because IP goes out of style. People can grow bored of things. Like how many times have we watched Activision burn through an IP? Oh, Guitar Hero is blowing up. Let's buy Harmonix or let's get Guitar Hero going. Let's burn Guitar Hero into the ground. Skylanders took off. Let's burn, Toys to Life into the ground. Tony Hawk, this is a huge thing. Burn it into the ground. Call of Duty for some reason has survived as long as it did, but not looking great this year. And if the following years don't look better, oof. Like we watched Activision just burn IP into the ground, and IP just goes away. Like Halo is nothing compared to what it used to be. If we went back in time 19 years ago to like the anticipation and hype around Halo 3, compared to like how do people feel about Halo Halo 1 remake right now, it's like it's a fucking shrug. We've literally watched like Halo go through the ringer. I've watched Mass Effect go through the ringer, with EA. Everything EA touches, the Midas hand of doom over there. Even big games that are still kind of big, like Assassin's Creed, are not what they used to be. Like I've watched IPs grow stale, mostly because all of these publishers are idiots, and they think once they have success, they have to fucking immediately pump out more success. It's like, oh, you discovered something tasty. Let me fucking fill my gut with it. Like, don't pace your fucking self. And Nintendo's always been good about sort of like pacing themselves, where they're like, yeah, one, maybe two games of an IP per console generation. We could make a 3D Mario game every year, every 2 years, but no, why? Why burn everyone out on 3D Mario? We'll make a 3D Mario once a generation. It'll be great. and it works. And they stand the test of time, and then they also gives them plenty of time to sit there and figure out what is the best way to go with it. Now, sometimes this can frustratingly lead to franchises just sort of disappearing, like F-Zero and Star Fox and what have you. But again, I think this is exactly what Singapore might be there for. Like, maybe this is an opportunity to take something that they have a real passion and drive for, and they're going to help bring back, and they're going to become the de facto studio for said franchise. Like, nobody, if you went back in time to the 90s, nobody would sit there and think a bunch of weird Canadians were going to carry the torch for Punch-Out. Nobody in the early 2000s, 2001 was going to sit there and be like, Canadians are going to carry the torch for Luigi's Mansion. What? Did you know, go back to the late 80s, go back to the early 90s and say, do you know a bunch of Texans are going to be like, leading, carrying the torch for Metroid in the future? What? Get out of here. It can happen. It can happen anywhere. You go back to the late 90s and say, like, hey, that really dark, morbid, like, way too mature for the kiddie console Nintendo. They're going to buy the fucking Xenogears developers, and they're going to take over the Xeno franchise, like, de facto. That's going to be a Nintendo thing in the future? Get the fuck out of here. Like, Xenogears is way too mature for kiddie. Look what happens. Look what happens. Happens over and over again. So, potentially very exciting. I think it's a great thing that Nintendo is expanding into Southeast Asia. I think much like China and Korea in the last few years, I think Southeast Asia is going to fucking explode, and I think we're going to see a lot of fucking great things come out of it, and I think Nintendo's smart as fuck to get in on this right now. So yeah, this is I think this is very exciting. I think this is going to be great. I'm not saying they're going to be the next Monolith Soft. Like, that's pretty rare. But I also think this could potentially lead to some fucking great things in the future. And I'm super happy to see, like, Nintendo just go and be like, you know what? I like you. You keep talking. It's just like, let's bring you in. Let's make you part of the team. Because, just more talent being brought in for Nintendo, who the last exclusive game maker left, and the smartest. This is just very potentially exciting. But let me know what you guys think. How do you feel about this acquisition? And what are you most excited about? And why do you think this happened? So, I'll be interested to hear it. And I will see you on the channel later, dudes.